Yeah, I know. I didn't get it. Yeah. All right. Okay. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Have attention, please. All quiet, please. Thank you. Go ahead. Put that away.
Okay.
Thank you. Put it away, although I'll take it away and you won't have it anymore. Okay. Go ahead. Have your notes out. We're going to be continuing looking at the Constitution with a great deal of relevance on issues such as how to remove a president from the position of the presidency, which is very topical. We talked about that with respect to, you got your notes out, ready to go, impeachment. And we looked and we saw President Johnson, number 17, impeached but not removed. President Nixon, almost impeached, but before he could be impeached, he resigned, so that was it. President Clinton was impeached, but not convicted and removed from office, so he finished his full term. Okay? We'll talk today about the President Trump impeachment of 2020, and we'll also give some context in some of the things that had been going on yesterday in Washington, D.C. and other parts. Okay? Yes? Okay, we'll recap that because I want you to make sure you understand that. It's a very important question. Okay? All right, got everyone's attention? Got your notes out? All right, so the question was, and I'm going to have you answer this question for me. Megan, the question was, how can you be impeached for doing something wrong, and then the same thing that you supposedly did something wrong, you're not removed from office? Can you give me an answer to why that is? Megan? Okay, I'll ask it a different way. Okay, and this is in the way of recap. Who impeaches, the House of Representatives or the Senate? Yes, that should be in your notes. The House of Representatives. They handle the impeachment part. Okay? Hang on just a sec. Megan, how many members of the House of Representatives, this is stuff we've covered. We covered it before the break, and we recapped it again when you came back on the break, right? How many, I'll give you three choices. How many members of the House need to agree for a president to be charged, therefore impeached? 3/4, 2/3, or a simple majority, 1 over half? Yep, simple majority. So it's a fairly low threshold, okay? If a president is impeached, like Johnson, like Nixon was about to, like Clinton, and then we'll talk about Trump. Megan, if a president is impeached, does that mean they automatically lose their job? No. Then it goes where? Very good. And they have a trial there. Now here's the last part. No, you're doing great. You're doing good. And everyone's like, I think I know this. I'm glad he's asking her because they're like, okay, we're going to find out whether I'm right or not. I'll give you three choices, and this is going to give you the answer to your question, Michael. Okay? And I'll give you a clue. It's harder in the Senate to get somebody removed than it is in the House to get somebody impeached. In other words, it's a higher threshold. I'll give you two choices this time. It's not a simple majority. It is 2/3 vote. Very good. Yep, that's good. So that was the deal. Michael, that's the deal. There was a majority of members of the House that wanted to impeach Clinton, and they did. But when it went to the Senate, there was not 2/3. Does that make sense? And you can write this down as well. You ready? 2020, the same thing happened with President Trump as far as how the numbers broke out. You got it? Without getting into the details just yet, know this. In the year 2020, President Trump, write that down, this is going to be the third time that a president has been impeached. In the year 2020, President Trump was impeached by a simple majority in the House of Representatives. And it also helped at that time that the House of Representatives, the majority was, and still is actually, Democrat. Got it? And they agreed pretty much, I think without exception, that what Trump had done was wrong. And we'll get to that here in just a minute. But then when it went to the Senate and they had the trial, pretty much all the Democrats were like, yeah, Trump has got to go. But did they get to the 2/3? No, there wasn't enough Republicans that went along. I want to say there was maybe one or two at most of the Republicans, and so that got the number up to like the high 40s, low 50s, but nothing like 67 senators voting to convict Trump and have him removed from office. Yeah.
Why wouldn't they bring it to the Supreme Court? Isn't it their job to...
Nope. You have to look at how it's set up in the Constitution. It is not the job of the Supreme Court. That's a very good question. When we look at different things like, can this person do this? Can this person do this? And when this situation comes up, the answer is we go to the Constitution. And the Constitution is very specific about it. Who handles the charging, the impeachment part? The House. Who handles the trial, the conviction part? The Senate. Does the Supreme Court have a role? No, except for one person. And that is the Chief Justice. He sits in the chair. I mean, this is weird. It's like he would never really go into that room for any other purpose except to preside over a trial after there had been an impeachment. Does that make sense? Those are important questions because yesterday there was all kinds of questions coming up like, well, can this person do that or this person do that? And can the vice president just say that the votes from the states don't count because there was potentially maybe something that perhaps went wrong or something? No. Okay? We'll take a couple of quick questions here and then there because I want to keep moving on because we got a lot of stuff to go on.
So is a president gets impeached in those cases or the vice president take over?
That is true. If a president is impeached and then convicted and removed, then the president's no longer on the job. And who takes the place of the president? You got that part figured out. We haven't even done that officially, but I think most people know implicitly that if the president dies or resigns, it's the vice president that comes in and takes over. Right? So, I mean, the last time that it's actually happened, President Nixon, when he resigned, president number 37, he quit. His vice president, Ford, took the oath of office and he became the president. Before that, Kennedy was shot and killed. His vice president, Lyndon Johnson, same day, takes the oath of office. Franklin D. Roosevelt, during World War II, died. His vice president, Harry Truman, took the oath of office and became president. When Warren G. Harding died in office, his vice president, Calvin Coolidge, took the oath of office. Abraham Lincoln was shot and killed in office. His vice president, Andrew Johnson, took the oath of office and took over. Yeah.
Oh, so if a vice president comes, do they get 8 years? Or do they
No, they finish out the term. And we haven't gotten to that officially yet, so hold off on that. But we'll get that officially in your notes. Okay? Question?
So to run for the House or the Senate, and you have to represent your state, you have to move all the way to Washington, D.C. like be part of
Good question. I'll give you the answer. Nowadays, a lot of the members of Congress, that would be House and Senate, I mean, they have to work in Washington, D.C., but a lot of them actually keep their main residence back in their home state. When my dad was elected in 1968, right, mom and dad, 5 sisters, me, my brother, dog, and a cat, we moved. We all moved, sold the house. Actually, no, rented the house. But we moved, got a new house in just outside of Washington, D.C., Arlington, Virginia. It's like right across the river. So, I mean, but the thing is, if you're the member of Congress, where do you do your work? Well, you do it in Washington, but you also got to go back to your state to talk to the people and connect to the people and so forth. Okay? All right. Now, Trump. In 2020, impeachment charges, here's the details, you can write this down. In 2020, impeachment charges were brought against him, and he was impeached in the House. Here was the charge, basically, the gist of it. He was charged with doing wrong, with wrongdoing, basically trying to, allegedly, get the government of Ukraine, and you guys should remember Ukraine from the last unit we did. That was the country that was kind of like part of Russia's history, but now it's an independent country. Anyway, Trump was charged with trying to put pressure on Ukraine to hand over details of what? About Joe Biden's son's dealings with Ukrainian companies that may or may not have been very, above board. You understand what I'm saying? Because if your kid if you're Joe Biden and your kid, adult kid, so he was an adult, is doing some stuff that looks kind of shady and so forth, does that help you, Joe Biden, when you're running for president? No, not necessarily. I mean, most people will look primarily at who the candidate is and maybe less so on their kids. But anyway, that was what the charge was. And Trump's response was, and the Republicans that supported him was, oh, they're just creating all kinds of stuff, and they don't like him, and they've been harassing him right from the get-go. So, I mean, the arguments take place in the House, and the arguments take place in the Senate, but really, the arguments take place across the country. You guys had your vote on what you thought should happen to Clinton, and I think you guys met the majority threshold to impeach him, and I think in this class you also met the two-thirds threshold to have him removed. And in fact, I think that happened in 3 out of the 4 classes. You guys were pretty tough. Like Frank, you're like, you messed up, man, you're out of there. Right? You were pretty tough on him. But notice, Clinton kind of won the argument with the American population because you needed like really 2/3 of the American population to communicate to their senators and representatives to get him removed from office. It didn't happen. It's a stain, certainly, on his reputation. He will always be a president who was impeached. But was he a president who was impeached and removed? No. Was Trump a president who was impeached and removed? No, we'll see. He's got 2 more weeks left. Okay? No, I mean, actually, you're like, what are you talking about? We haven't even gotten to it yet, but the 25th Amendment has a means of like having the president removed or having the presidential powers taken away because of, and some people are talking about that. Check it out. When you go home, you're like, Google 25th Amendment, news, and you'll see all kinds of different people, mostly Democrats, but there's some Republicans that are going, what Trump did yesterday in speaking to that crowd who was really unhappy about how the election went down, and then he's like, let's go, march on the Capitol building. And they did march on the Capitol building. And did they keep it all like peaceful protest? No. They broke into the building, ransacked the place. It was not pretty. And the members of Congress were not happy about that at all. Because they had gathered there on their first day of the session to do a number of things, including count what had been handed to them by the states. And we know what had been handed to them by the states, the electoral results. And so their job was just to go, well, this is what these states did. And there already was going to be a bit of a delay in the process, which is fine. But they weren't expecting to have people like break down doors and bash through windows and come in and have the Capitol Police have to try and defend it. And one woman got shot and killed by a Capitol Police officer as she was part of a group that was trying to break into one part of the Capitol building. And I guess there's 3 other people that were killed. I don't know all the details of that. But it was a mess. And so some people are going, well, is there anything in the Constitution that we could like put a president aside? Now, one answer is impeachment and trial in the Senate. And I've read some stuff about that, and mostly people are like, there's just not enough time. I mean, how many more days until the inauguration?
14.
Less than 2 weeks now. It's 13 days, yeah. The inauguration's on the 20th. But can somebody be removed? So here's one thing. In the 25th Amendment, which was passed, we'll get to it. In fact, let's go ahead and do that one. Where is that? It's in the presidential section, page 2, about 2/3 of the way down. You can go ahead and take a quick peek there. 25th Amendment. We've only had 26 amendments. This one was done in the mid-1960s after Kennedy was shot and killed. We should have done it sooner. Because one part of the 25th Amendment says if a president is killed, obviously we know the vice president takes the place. But part of the 25th Amendment is like, well, who's going to replace the vice president? Because, once your spare is taken, then, it's like if you're driving a car and your tire blows up. You take the spare out, right? What happens if another tire blows up? Do you have a spare for that spare? No, you don't. So the 25th Amendment, among other things, creates an opportunity to bring in a new vice president. That's one part of it, all right? But another thing it does is, well, what if the president is shot and in a coma? They're not dead. They're still the president. They're in a coma. That has actually happened. Woodrow Wilson, number 28, you'll learn more about him next year. He had a stroke, a major stroke, lack of oxygen to the head, and he was like incapacitated for months. I mean, he really couldn't do his job. I mean, he was in the White House, and his wife was there, and there were a couple of key aides, and I mean, it was like, that's not good. Do we want to be in that position where, like, the president is not able to do the job because of health reasons? And no. So one of the things the 25th Amendment does is allow for the opportunity of the vice president to be given the powers of acting president. They're not officially president, but they have all the powers of acting president. You got that? And actually very practical, because I want to say George H.W. Bush, I think it was him, he was having like some surgery, and sometimes when you have surgery, they put you under. I mean, not for good, but I mean, like, you wake up, hopefully. But while you're under, you can't be president. So who has the power of president in case, I don't know, somebody launches a nuclear attack at us, so that we actually have a president who's capable of responding very quickly? The 25th Amendment allows for the vice president to have all that power of acting president. Well, what happens if a president doesn't want to be declared unable to do the job? Here's the quick answer. You ready? The vice president looks at the situation and goes, this guy cannot do this job. And if at least half of the cabinet, the top people in the president's government, if more than half of them agree, boom, the vice president has the powers of acting president. You got that? So there's some people talking about that today. They're like, we're really concerned about Trump. He doesn't seem to be like regular Trump. He seems to be getting a little bit potentially dangerous, because when you say to a crowd, let's march up to the Capitol building, you could reasonably foreseeably see what they might do once they get up there when they're really, really angry after hearing several speeches about how all this unfairness and so forth. They might break into the building. And did that happen? Yes, it did happen. Yeah, no, so there's seriously, some people are like, well, maybe, we'll do the 25th on Trump for, less than 2 weeks, and then Pence will have the job. It may already sort of be happening right now as we speak. Because I mean, literally, as when I was reading the newspaper or reading the news, hang on just a sec, they were saying there wasn't enough Capitol Police. If you watch any of the videos and you saw these people trying to break into the building, it was like, man, they were overwhelmed very quickly. I mean, it was not good. You see, like, the lines break and then chasing after this, and it was just, like, not good. So what do you do when you don't have enough law enforcement? You call out the National Guard. That's like a military component. Well, who has the power to do that? The president. And I read something like, the National Guard was called out later in the day, yesterday, to restore order and clear the Capitol building of all the people running around.
Who called them out?
Vice President. And it's like, but does the vice president have the authority to do that? And I'm like, well, it's like, so there's some interesting things going on in Washington right now, to say the least, okay? But where you go when you're trying to find the answers typically is you go to the Constitution. You try and see how these things are set up, because the Constitution is set up ultimately to provide for a means of having a really good, normal, functioning government, right? Just because half of the members of Congress think that you're not a good president and you should go, is that enough? No, you need 2/3 of the Senate, yeah.
How come, so do we expect to have two vice
No, we have one president.
So we're going to do one.
He's not president until
President-elect.
January 20th. That is when he officially takes the job, okay? But right now it's President Trump. Okay. All right. Got it? Shall we move on? Do you have any questions? Quickly, because I didn't.
So if, as you were saying, like, so say the president goes into coma and then the vice president takes the president's power.
Yes.
If the president comes out of coma, does he just instantly take it back?
Yes. Yes. Good question.
How do I run for Congress?
Well, you have to be at least 25 for the House of Representatives. Okay.
Okay.
Well, let's work on that as we go through here, okay? Pay attention in class, and you will learn some of the kinds of things. It's really easy to meet the constitutional requirements. In order to run for the House of Representatives, you got to be 25 years of age. Deanna, what else do you have to be to run for the House of Representatives under the Constitution? You have to come from that state, not the district necessarily, but it helps to come from the district. And then what, do you have to be a U.S. citizen for at least how many years? At least how many years? Oh, good, you know how to count. All right, 7 years, yeah. We'll see when we get to the Senate, it's slightly larger. And yeah, all right, so you guys ready? All right, now, Section 3. Article 1, Section 3 deals with the United States Senate. Here we go. You ready? The United States Senate. The term. The length of years. You're going to write this down. The length of years, Megan, how many years? What do you suppose? Is it going to be 2 or more?
2. Wait, more.
Yes.
More.
4 or 6?
4. 6.
Yes, 6. Write it down. 6. A member of the United States Senate is elected for a 6-year term. Make sure you write that down. Yeah, no, president. It's actually kind of easy to remember. House is 2. President, vice president is 4. So whenever you hear somebody like saying, I really like my president, I want them to be reelected, then they go through a chant, 4 more years, 4 more years, okay? For a Senate, it's 6. So put this down automatically. You ready? Because we're going to start to see some differences. And these are intentional between the House and the Senate. In the Senate, write this down. The Senate was created with some distance from the voters. The senators are expected to not always do exactly what the voters want at exactly that moment. And you're like, whoa, that doesn't sound very much like a democracy. And I'm like, that's right. It's not entirely like a democracy because sometimes in a democracy, have you noticed this? Sometimes people in a democracy, they do stupid things without thinking through. So in a democracy, they might vote one certain way because of something that's going on, and then afterwards they're thinking, well, that really wasn't the best thing that we probably should have done. Have you ever done that in your life? You made a decision, you acted out in a certain way, and then on second thought, put your hands down. I agree. On second thought, you probably shouldn't have. All right? So here's the deal, right? Make sure you write this down. If you're a United States Senator and you're elected for a 6-year term, all right, so you take the oath of office, you're about to start a 6-year term, and there's a critical vote coming up. And a lot of people in your state are like, vote this way, vote this way. But you look at the situation, you're like, I don't think that's good for our country. I'm smart, and I'm looking at the big picture, and I'm going to do what I think is best, even though it's not popular right now. They want senators to do that a bit, because here's what's going to happen. That senator is going to vote in a way that maybe his people back in his state or her state don't like. But when's the next time they're going to get a chance to vote him out of office? Or 5 years under the scenario that I gave. That's a long time in politics. So the Senate, the idea, make sure you write this down. The Senate is meant to be more mature. I think that's probably the best way of putting it. More mature, more thoughtful, more like look at the big picture, and less democratic. I mean, less like, the people are going to be able to throw you out on your ear. Yeah, because not right away. So it's weird because like sometimes issues come up in the Senate and some senators are about to like face the voters again and they're like, wow, they're really sensitive to what the voters are thinking. But other senators are like, I got 5 years, I got some distance. Got it? Oh, by the way, raise your hand if you can identify some important job in the United States government where they never have to face the voters. No, the president does have to. Every 4 years. Hello? Trump had to face the voters after 4 years in office. Supreme Court, yep. And all the federal judges. They have a great deal of power. When we get to those guys, we're like, once they're put in office, like for example, President Trump was concerned about the voting procedures and different things, and his campaign team was bringing up all kinds of appeals in different states. A couple of those appeals went to the Supreme Court. And I don't know if President Trump actually thought that the 3 people he appointed out of the 9 on the Supreme Court were automatically going to like rule in his favor. They didn't. And can he do anything about that? Can he fire them? No. And not only that, they don't face the voters. Our Supreme Court, when we get to it, we're going to see those guys are expected to be, men and women are expected to be really mature. Can't touch them. They can stay in there for the rest of their lives if they want to. And the last justice She did stay in for the rest of her life. Ruth Bader Ginsburg, she died in office. That was the only way her position actually came open again. All right, here's another one. For the Senate, only 1/3 of the senators are up every 2 years. So it's split out. You got 100 senators, you got 33, 33, and 34. In this last election, I want to say like 33 or maybe 34 of the positions were up for election. So you can write it down in your notes as like staggered. Okay? So we got 33 of them up this year. How many are going to be up for election 2 years from now? About 33. And then 2 years after that, the rest of them. And then we kind of finally swing back around. So if you're a senator who was just elected in 2020, when's the next time you face the voters?
2026.
Exactly, 2026. It's a long time. You got that? All right. Here's the next thing you need to know. Number. Oh, this is easy. How many senators does each state get? 2. Write it down. 2. What if you're a teeny tiny state like I don't know, Delaware or Alaska or Wyoming? I mean, they got a lot of territory, Alaska and Wyoming, but they don't got a lot of people. They get 2. What about if you're a massive state like California with the country's biggest population? You get 2. If you recall from last year, that was part of that compromise between the big states and the small states in the early stages of our country. The small states were like, I don't know if we want to be in a country with all you big states because you're going to be having all the power. They compromised. So in the Senate, 2 senators for each state, no matter how small you are. Okay? That actually ends up giving the small states a fair amount of power relative to, in the House, they get voted out, or they get outvoted anyway. All right? Age requirement. Oh, so how many are there altogether?
Isn't it like, 50, 102?
There's 100.
What, oh. I thought
Yep.
it was 51,
50 times 2.
Nope, there's only 50 states. At present, there's only 50 states. Check the flag over here. That is a 50-state star design. If you look over at this art piece of the 3 flags, that was done prior to Alaska and Hawaii coming into the Union, and that has 48 stars. So that's like a 6x8 configuration. If we added a state, we'd have to come up with another design. Just like I'm figuring out how to come up with a design for our presidents right here. But don't you worry your little heads about that. I got it figured out. It'll be awesome. You'll come and go, wow, that's amazing.
Or that's just not.
Although it's weird because I'm thinking, I don't know, who is going to be the 46th president of the United States? Is it going to be Biden? Or is it going to be Pence?
Wait, what?
For like a week? I don't know.
How is that?
No, it's probably not going to happen. Okay? Yes?
How about since we voted to kick him out, we just knock off Bill? So it's even again.
No.
Knock off Bill and then do more than sit by.
No, we move on. All right. The age requirement. Okay? Age requirement is 30 years. You have to be at least 30 years of age to be in the House of Representatives. Excuse me, the Senate. Got that? So it's a little bit more mature than the House. Yeah. I think because they're just sort of, when they were putting it together, they're like, well, we don't want to like make them wait forever. So the House is like, 25, but we want the senators to be a little bit more mature and like know what's going on in the world. As it is, are there many 30-year-olds in the Senate? No, I mean, there's some really old people in the Senate. Some of them have been reelected 6 years, 6 years, 6 years. Probably, I want to say the average age in the Senate is probably in the 60s, maybe upper 60s. It's pretty old. I mean, they stand for election, and the voters are like, we like who you are, we like your experience, you've got a lot of know-how, we're going to keep electing you. When I was a page in the United States Senate, there was a senator who was there, and eventually I think he finally finished when he was 100 years old. Quickly.
Do they like have to, to become the president, you just have to be like 30 and then.
We haven't gotten to the president yet. We're talking about the Senate.
I want to run for president.
You have to be 35. Hold off. All right, so age 30, okay? You also have to reside in your state. Write that down. You got to be a resident of the state that you're going to be representing, which is no big deal. And of course, you're elected for the entire state. They don't do 2 districts for the Senate. We have 2 senators for Idaho. Each of them represents the entire state of Idaho. Okay? Yeah, quickly.
For your ongoing
State of Washington? Yeah. Okay, and that's actually interesting. Here's one for you. Hillary Clinton became a United States Senator from the state of New York. She actually grew up in Illinois. When she married Bill Clinton, they lived in Arkansas. When he was President of the United States, they lived in Washington, D.C. She moved to New York, and the requirement in order to become a resident of the state of New York, you had to be there for a certain time. It was actually about less than a year. Her biggest challenge when running as a senator from New York was persuading New Yorkers to vote for her as being a New Yorker. And she was able to do that. She was elected to the United States Senate, like I want to say like 1994, okay? So after Bill Clinton had been out of office. Maybe he was 92 even, okay? So you also have to be, write it down, a U.S. citizen. You have to be a U.S. citizen for at least 9 years. So it's a little bit more than for the House of Representatives, but that's probably not going to be much of a limitation for somebody running for it. Yeah.
So for a senator, you have to be a citizen for 9 years,
Mhm.
but for the president, you have to be for 10 years.
Wait for the president part. When we get to the president, it's going to be a little bit complex, and so you actually have to be born as a U.S. citizen, and you have to be born on U.S. soil-ish. Anyway, it gets a little confusing, but we'll hold off on that, okay? All right, let me see. Are we at to this point yet? Oh, by the way, here is a, excuse me. Oh. Here is a picture of the United States Senate when it's nice and orderly, as opposed to when people are bashing down doors and things like that. This is how things look nice and orderly. I remember one of the senators was saying, I was watching on the camera and there's some guy going through my stuff on my desk. And I'm like, anyway. Psst. I think they kind of sprayed it all down. So here you go. There's the United States Senate. And here's the gallery where they have visitors and so forth. I don't think you can quite see it, but there's some stairs right here. When I was your age, in the summer of 1979, I was a page. And we would sit along the things there, and as soon as the senators snapped their fingers, we'd go off to the senator, and they would give us a message or some errand that we need to do. It was actually a really fun job to have that summer. One time, like the person sitting up here, the person who is presiding over the Senate, in fact, let's go to that. The person who presides over the Senate is known as the President of the Senate, and it's kind of weird. Make sure you have this clear in your notes. The President of the Senate is the Vice President of the United States. That's one of the jobs of being Vice President of the United States. Okay? And so, like yesterday, Mike Pence, make sure you get his name down. Okay? He is the current Vice President, and he will be for like 2 weeks. And he is the President of the Senate. So he presided over the Senate when they were doing all the kinds of various different things having to do with the electoral vote and so forth. Yeah? Whoever the vice president is, if Donald Trump had been reelected and Mike Pence had been reelected as vice president, he would have been the president of the Senate for 8 years. As it turns out, did he know much about the Senate before becoming vice president? Yeah, he was a senator from Indiana. So he had some experience there. Here's an interesting thing. Write this down. Presiding over the Senate is not that exciting. No, seriously, write that down. And I'll tell you why. To preside over the Senate, to sit here and preside over, and they're all the senators are in this picture, but most of the time they're not all there. They're back in their regular offices in one of the 3 large Senate office buildings, which are just located to the north of the Capitol building. That's where they spend most of their time. But when they come down there, they're giving speeches. Oh, and here's the deal. Write this down. Typically in the Senate, the speeches can go on and on and on. And the rules of the Senate are such that, they want people to be mature. They want people to be thoughtful. We want to hear everything you've got to say. And so in the Senate, if a senator gets the floor, you know what I'm saying, the floor, like they have the opportunity, they have the privilege of speaking on the floor, they generally can't be cut off. As opposed to the House, where Nancy Pelosi, with her gavel, she can be like, you got 1 minute, and don't go over that, because I got the gavel. They run things differently in the House. In the Senate, it's more relaxed that way. They're more thoughtful. They're more concerned. It takes longer. And if you're presiding, you're just sitting there and you're like, oh my gosh. Are you ready? This is how it works. Here's the person presiding over the Senate. Okay, ready? This is exciting. Okay, now you get to talk. Okay, now, oh, you're done? Okay, now you get to talk.
I'll take over.
I haven't recognized you. He's still talking. Okay, oh, now I recognize you. Now you get to, and I'm speeding things up. Put this down. Normally, the vice president is not doing the job of presiding over the Senate because it's a really boring job. No, I mean, when I was a page in the United States Senate, I never once saw the vice president all summer. Well, then who was presiding over the Senate when they were having different things? I mean, it got exciting when they were debating and voting on something and so forth, like they debated and voted on the Electoral College. But on other times, it was like pretty slow going. Here's what they do. They will rotate in members of the Senate, lower-ranking members of the Senate, from whatever party's in the majority. So in that year, it was a Democratic vice president, and then they would rotate different Democratic senators in there. And they would sit up there maybe for an hour or two. If they were really unfortunate, they'd have to like do that duty. Okay, now you get to talk. And they get hungry. I remember one time I was sitting right at the spot here, waiting, looking around to see which senator is going to snap their fingers, and then I hear snap behind me, and I'm like, weird. It was the junior junior senator from the state of North Carolina. And he was presiding over the Senate, and he was hungry. And I went up, and I'm like, what can I do something for you? He took out some money, and he handed it to me. He goes, could you get me a Hershey's ball with almonds? That's what he asked for. So what did I do? Exactly. I took his money, and I went down to the store in the Capitol building, and I bought a Hershey's ball with almonds, and I got the change, and I went back to that senator, and I gave him the Hershey's bar with almonds, and no, I think he took the changes over. Anyway, I might be embellishing. I think he might have a credit and so forth. Yeah, this is for Senator so-and-so. Really, it is. Yeah. Yes. Now it's like your age. Yeah, maybe a little bit older. It was fun. Okay? I don't get into all that just right now. But, I mean, that's part of it. Write this down. Vice President, the job, it can be pretty boring. I mean, presiding over the Senate is not an exciting part. Here's where it gets exciting. Write this down, because I'm going to tell you like vice president things, just so you know it, because it doesn't take very long. Let me see. Breaking tie votes. Breaking tie votes. And actually, here is going to be the new president of the Senate, the new vice president. Make sure you have her name, because I think she'll be the one that's going to be on the test by the time we get to the test on the Constitution. Kamala Harris gives up her position as a Democratic senator from the state of California. And as of January 20th, she will take the job of Vice President of the United States. Okay? She's actually, one of the first things she's going to have to do is break a tie vote. Because you know how many Republican senators there are in the newly elected Senate? 50. And you know how many Democratic senators there are in the newly elected Senate? 50. That's a tie. So who has the majority? Who gets to break the tie vote? She does. I think this next 2 years in particular, it's going to be a little bit more interesting for her as vice president than some of the other ones. But make sure you write this down. What other official jobs are there for the vice president besides presiding over the Senate, which can be boring, or breaking tie votes? Officially, in the Constitution? Nothing. And some vice presidents have not been used to do stuff by the president. Some vice presidents have just been sort of ignored. Like Franklin Roosevelt had 3 vice presidents. The first one he had for 8 years said that being vice president is like a warm bucket of spit. And when he didn't say spit, he said something else that comes out of a human body. He says, this job is terrible. He didn't want the job anymore. And then somebody else got the job for Roosevelt's 3rd term. And then Roosevelt was like, I don't really want you to be my vice president anymore. So who was Roosevelt's vice president during his 4th term? Yeah. So what is the most important thing a vice president has as far as like real power? You take over if the president is dead or resigns. That's an important thing. That's why you have to pay really careful attention. I mean, people are looking at Trump versus Biden, but they were also looking to a degree at Kamala Harris and Mike Pence. Because you never know. For president, I mean, this guy right here, number 9, William Henry Harrison, he was president for like a month. He died of pneumonia after giving a speech in the cold, his inauguration speech. He got a cold, he got pneumonia, he died within a month. His vice president, John Tyler, took over and was president for the remaining, 3 years and 11 months. Dude. So, question.
Isn't she one of the first woke?
Yes, she is. Yeah, very good. Write that down. She's the very first female vice president of the United States of America. Okay? So this will be interesting. In our government, we will have the continuation of the first female Speaker of the House. And now the first female Vice President of the United States. Raise your hand if you think in your lifetime we will be experiencing in this country the first female President of the United States. I think so. Now, here's the interesting one. Raise your hand if you think it's going to be a Democrat. Raise your hand if you think it's going to be a Republican. I think it's going to be one or the other because those are pretty much the parties that we have in our country. We haven't had anybody besides a Republican or Democrat since, I want to say, like Millard Fillmore. I think he was the last Whig party. Yeah, Whig. Yeah, they don't exist anymore as a political party. The Whigs. Yes, the Whigs. All right, now, let's go ahead and put this one down. I had to actually change my slide here. Okay, you need to write these guys down in your notes. The current majority leader, or was the majority leader, now he's the minority leader of the Republicans. Write his name down, Mitch McConnell. He's from the state of Kentucky. Okay, Mitch McConnell. Bless you. And as the new Senate comes in, because they just had the elections in Georgia, if you're paying attention to that on Tuesday, they were very, very close, but it looks like the Democrat candidates both won in those races in Georgia. So, therefore, the Democrats are 50-50. Who breaks the tie? Kamala Harris. Democrats will be in the majority. So we'll call him the majority leader, Chuck Schumer, one of the 2 senators from New York, is going to be the new majority leader. So think of him as being the Democratic leader in the Senate, and Mitch McConnell is the Republican leader in the Senate. Got that? Okay. Idaho has 2 senators. Here they are. Write them down. We have 2 senators. It says R's. R, of course, standing for Republican, exactly. Republican, they're both, hello. Did you know Idaho was a very Republican state? And I want to say the last time we had a Democrat senator from the state of Idaho was Frank Church, and he was defeated running for re-election to the United States Senate in 1980. He was a Democrat, my dad a Republican, they got along pretty well. It was Frank Church that appointed me as a page for the summer of 1979. That was pretty cool. The most senior of the one that's been there the longest is Mike Crapo, is how you pronounce his name correctly. He's from Idaho Falls. Seriously. He's from Idaho Falls. He is an attorney, although his full-time job now is United States Senator from the state of Idaho. And Jim Risch is from Boise. He's also an attorney. Make sure you got those names. And they've been senators from the state of Idaho for quite some time. And they've risen up in their seniority and their position. Usually, if you're a brand new one, they don't give you as much authority. Although, can you guys tell me what was the name of a man elected from the state of Illinois in the year 2004? And 4 years later, he's running for president of the United States, and he got elected.
Obama.
Barack Obama had served in the United States Senate for all of 4 years, got the Democratic nomination for president in 2008, and won and became president of the United States after spending 4 years in the United States. Joe Biden, had he served in the United States Senate? He was elected to the United States Senate beginning in the 1970s. I'll show you later on a picture of Joe Biden as a young senator. He autographed it for me, a United States Senate page. And he's young. He had hair. But yeah, he's had a lot of time in the United States Senate before becoming vice president. And then, I'll show it to you guys later. Okay, wipe her down. I think we're at the time. Yep. Yeah, when does the first session begin? January 6th. I knew this, and you guys will always remember. January 6th. Why? Because yesterday was January 6th. It was the opening day of the session in Congress. Yeah, that happened. Okay. Yeah, I know. It's like, wow.
That's a part of history now.
It is a part of history.
Oh, God.
Check your things. Forward that to me. If you actually did finish that for me,